I will officially call the meeting to order, and then I will ask, are there any additions at this time, corrections, modifications, or substitutions to the current agenda? And I believe that there are. Lori, do you want to reference those, Lori? Or?
There are two amendments, and Chairman Guthrie will read both of them.
Okay. Thank you. Do I hear a motion to accept the aforementioned amendments to the agenda?
Well, we have to read them first.
Oh. Yeah. We don't have to, just to clarify, we don't have to approve the amendments? Yeah.
Approve one,
We have to take action on the amendment changes, correct?
each one. Yes.
And then I'll read them.
If they don't know what they are, how can they approve them if they don't know what
Okay, all right. Okay,
they are? So go ahead.
Paid with the big bucks.
okay. All right.
State it, amendment number one, and ask for the motion and approval of that amendment.
Okay. Amendment number one. Before I read the statement, I will just say this is in response to a procedural error in our February 21 meeting. There was no ill intent, and it was merely an oversight. And I will read this statement, please. To the extent that our taking action on February 21, 2012, to vote on the start date of the next 3 school years was in violation of the Idaho Open Meetings Act due to the board having taken action and voting on an agenda item that specifically indicated that no action would be taken, and without amending our agenda to indicate that action would be taken. I hereby move, pursuant to Section 67-23477 Idaho Code, that the board declare the action of voting a start date of the next 3 school years on February 21, 2012, to be null and void, and the board cure any possible violation of the Open Meetings Act that occurred with this vote. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I'll at this time take a roll call vote, beginning with Trustee Binion.
Yay.
Trustee Graves.
Yay.
Trustee Bates.
Yay.
Trustee Nerge.
Yay.
And yay on behalf of myself. Any further discussion? No discussion. Motion approved by unanimous vote.
And Chairman Guthrie?
Yes.
The amendment / motion are both approved.
The amendment / statement motion approved as read. So, in addition, amendment number 2, we're going to again take action today on the error that was made on February 21. And I just know, so here it goes. In follow-up, do I hear a motion? In follow-up, I hereby move to, In follow-up, I hereby move to approve the day after Labor Day as a start date for the next 3 school years. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Catherine?
This was the first that I've heard of this, I guess. And when did that and how did this arise? Or who brought this to our attention, or did we realize this, or?
Yeah, we realized it after the error was made in February. So we contacted our attorneys, and she suggested that we make this cure and follow up on the action that we took on the start date.
So the error was that we did not amend the agenda at the beginning of the meeting to reflect a potential action item? Okay.
So amendment number 2, the motion now on the table is to, again, vote on the school start date, which is post-Labor Day, for a term of 3 years. Did we get a second on that? I think we did. And then, any further discussion? Okay, once again, I will take a roll call vote on this issue, again, starting with trustee Binion.
Yay.
Catherine?
Yay.
Trustee Bates?
Yay.
Trustee Nerge?
Yay.
And on behalf of myself, yay. So, motion passed by unanimous vote. Amendment and motion passed by unanimous vote. Okay, moving on. Today's workshop, I'd like to welcome Mr. Fritz Peters and Mr. Mike Chatterton. And Fritz, you're going to kind of give us a rundown on the facilities update. I know that you presented about 2 years ago, so we're going to.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, because I'm going to work with Fritz.
Oh, great. Okay.
We kind of determined I would start just for a couple of minutes, and then we'll turn it over to Fritz, who facilitated that.
Okay. All right. Dr. Barber, you're up.
Ready?
Okay.
Thank you.
And I have
First board, I would like to say that, it wasn't very long ago where we were having discussions about these learning sessions. And the board made the decision to move to at least one learning session a month. And now I have to tell you, I can't even hardly imagine not having them. I mean, they have been so productive for the administration, I hope for the board. It really gives us a chance, and these meetings are streamed. Another thing that I can't imagine not having now, thank you, Mr. Bates, Trustee Bates, because it really has become important to us that, you don't have to drive in here on a snowy day and you can still view it, and they're archived. So I just, first of all, I just want to say thank you for, I think our district has improved around the decisions the board made to do these kind of sessions. They're great for us, and I hope they're good for you.
Just as valuable, I think, for the board.
I appreciate it. Well, what we're going to do today is we have a number of people here today that actually served on what we were calling a program and facility and program audit. And how this grew up was interesting. We were in an administrative council meeting, which was all the principals and all the directors, and we started talking about the issue that got us on this topic was one that all school districts face, and certainly we are facing it, and that was we have so many things going, and we have such broad programming. What can we take off the plate? Is there anything we can take off? So how this program and facilities audit started was in this corner right here on that flip chart. And the principals and the directors were working together, and we decided to list all the major initiatives and programs that were going on in our school district. And when we got to 7 pages, we decided we needed to do something a little bit different than that. So what happened at that time was the administrative council, which is 22 people, split in half, and half of that group worked on this programming and staffing committee recommendation. It became a recommendation, and the other half created a group that we called Team 21, which was putting a lot of time and attention and meetings into how do we move into the 21st century. And interestingly enough, we just reviewed that yesterday, and we are really doing some work. While I'm here, board, I would like to invite the board to our next administrative council meeting. We did that a year ago, and if you remember, if you can make it, it's just a chance for you to come in and see the administration, the principals, the directors, the superintendent at work. We have 2 of those meetings a month. They're 4 hours and 3 hours. As we were saying yesterday, we could spend more time than that, but we can't really afford principals out of their buildings longer. So our next meeting, we would love to invite any of the board that can make it to come in and observe the administrative council meeting.
Do you have a date and time?
Yeah, I do,
Okay.
Chairman Guthrie, but I don't have it on me,
Okay.
so I'll run up and get it before we adjourn. Anyway, what happened was half of our administrative council went to work on.
Excuse me, Lon.
Yeah.
On that note, one of the things that I think would really be handy is if have an ongoing notification of when the next meetings are, because, you know, you may tell us when the next one is, but the one after that, if we could be notified when they, you know, when they are the week or two previous, then perhaps not this one.
Yeah, and you, of course, you're welcome to come in whenever. This next one would be a great one because we're really starting to do some solidifying some work on 21st century and how we're going to move the school district to 21st century. I mean, we're already working, and we've been working on that for 4 years. But our conversation yesterday really, really started to put us on a direction for who does what by when, and that's a kind of a tool that we use. So, but we can certainly do that, Trustee Bates.
Lynn has it all on her calendar.
Do you have the date, Lynn?
15th of March.
March 15th, at 8 o'clock in the morning.
What day of the week is that?
So it's a Thursday, yes. Okay, so what ended up happening was, and Mr. Peters did facilitate this half of our administrative council, but I would just tell you, I think I think it was co-facilitated. I think Howie Royal was at every meeting. Rex was on that. Mr. Chatterton was on it. I went to some of each. And the work that they did was this. The first thing that they did was they wanted to really understand, in context, globally, what do we have in front of us? Because we always have so many things going on. Around that, then came, they worked for a full year. Then came a prioritization from the committee of, and what they were doing was looking at programs, and they were trying to look at the challenges that lay in front of those programs so that we understood the challenges, so that as we move towards fulfillment of them, or at least growth of those programs, we understood the challenges in front of us. And that's sort of how the conversation grew out. And I will just tell you this, the easiest thing in the world, start a program in a school district. The toughest thing in the world is to maintain it and make it grow and make it better all the time. Because when you first start a program, you've got resource, you've got some excitement, and school districts are great at saying, oh, what's the next thing that we should do? What's more difficult is the maintenance and the improvement ongoing of those programs. That's what this is an attempt to do. So I appreciate very much being able to come before the board today, go through this audit. We actually, Fritz and I were talking on the phone last night. It is a living document that we probably need to update. So what we would like to do for you today is Mr. Peters is going to start going through this. And a lot of these things we are addressing. And so we'd like to just sort of, when we're addressing one, or if we've sort of put that challenge behind us, just let the board know that. And then what I will do, similar to the superintendent's planning document that we created, is we'll go through this and have all the people involved do some kind of an update on it and get it to the board. This is the document that's about 1.5 years old. Go ahead, Mrs. Graves.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so this was, it was put together in '09? May of 10.
Yeah.
That there's been things that, programs that we've added since then. Are we going to kind of insert some of those today or talk about those at the end?
Well, we can. I think, we're going to have about an hour or 45 minutes plus questions. And so I don't think our intention is today to make sure that we don't miss a single program. Our intention is to look at the programs that are in front of us and how the group prioritized them and challenges that they put in that they foresaw coming our way. So, one of the challenges to our school district, I will be honest with you, is this, not to keep adding more programming. It's a huge challenge to all school districts. It's a big challenge to Blaine County because we have such broad programming, but we had this discussion yesterday in the administrative council. What we need to do now is we need to put a lot of focus and energy into the programs we currently have and see if we can't see those through to not a culmination, because programming doesn't culminate, but certainly we want to make the programs that we have now the best they can possibly be. And I don't think I get disagreement with any administrators here, we can do that by always having something brand new in front of us. So my commitment to them and to the board is to try to stay the course with the programming we have to make it the best possible. So I think what you're going to see today is a lot of the things that are in front of us, ongoing. These aren't things, and we've been honest in this thing to talk to the board about what are the challenges that lay with making those programs the very best they can be. Mr. Peters, anything to add to the introduction?
Yeah, it's really an issue of, remember that the committee is made up of a lot of people, and this is the work of a lot of people, so that's important to me that it's not seen as my committee, because I wouldn't want to take credit for all the work, number one. But also, I think if there's something on there that I had more to do with, it's like that calendar right there. As I spoke to you one day, I got up here and talked about our calendar. That was a real passion for me, so I might have had more emphasis on that in the committee than anything else. So it's the work of a lot of people, and it's the work of us brainstorming and coming to conclusions and trying to prioritize and then report back.
I am going to add one thing, then I'm going to sit down and let Mr. Peters go to work here. This is not a document that documents all the wonderful things that are currently involved with each of these programs. And so I don't want anyone to think that this list of items is inclusive or trying to describe our programming. I mean, as a matter of fact, it's the opposite. It's relatively limited, and what the committee was looking at, because certainly, just so you know, we can add to each one of these things that we're doing so many positive things. We don't have a column for that. We have the two columns are the cost, if there is a cost or an issue with that, and the recommendations that committee made for trying to resolve some of those issues. So I don't want anyone to think if we're looking at this, any of these categories that they talk about the benefits of the program, because if the programs weren't beneficial to us, we would not have them, or we wouldn't be concerned with them. We'd start to phase them out. John, did you have something?
Just a quick question, Fritz. How many people serve on your committee?
I'd say about 15. It was about a group of 15.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sit down. Thank you, Fritz.
Sure.
So, before you begin, Fritz?
Yes.
Just a reminder that this is a more informal setting, so comments from the audience and obviously from the board are welcome. And Fritz, how do you want to, you're the presenter, so would you prefer interaction during the presentation? Is that,
Sure.
That's usually generally how.
Yeah, because I think
works best.
if I'm talking about something and a question comes up, I'd much rather have the question asked at that time
Yeah.
rather than holding questions to something where someone might forget it or I might be off on a completely different topic. So
Okay.
I think that's fine.
Great, thank you.
A relaxed environment would be great.
Yep.
So basically what I want to do is just kind of walk you through the three sections. And I don't really want to spend my time reading it to you or going over every single salient point, but just basically to talk about what we did and why. So just as an example, dual immersion is right there on the top, and that doesn't mean that it's more important than anything else that's in this section. It was one of the first topics that came up. So we started off with 140 topics, and we first tried to coalesce them to get them into common themes or topics if there was some obvious overlap. We also then went and just threw some of them out because we were just brainstorming when this first came out. You know how brainstorming is, it's just everyone puts up everything. So we took some off the shelf that we didn't think were even viable to spend our time with, but this first whole section in red is where we felt these were some things, and this was 2 years ago. You'll find that this is dated. Okay, there's a lot of things in here that don't even really apply anymore. So first off with dual immersion, things that came up right away is not the benefits of dual immersion. That's not why we were meeting. We were really, one of our biggest things here is cost and staffing. That's why we met. If you go all the way down to the bottom of the first page, you'll see reduction of staffing costs. That was one of the things that was really coming to our realization as a district and as an administrative team of how I want to say over, but how properly funded we are. This is the way education should be in our minds, okay? Kids should be a priority in our community. So you can see that at our certification staff, our certified staff, we're well over the funding limit for what we get from the state, the funding formula or the state index. Classified even more so. So right away, you can see right across into the next column is we already gave some suggestions in our committee work. We talked about a hiring freeze for any new positions. We can't keep adding 10 and 5 and 6 and 7 certified staff every single year and more parapros wherever we need them. That was a big concern of ours, that we just can't maintain this kind of growth annually because our salaries are higher than most school districts, and that continual growth on our funding was just going to be debilitating. So I think that you'll see also was, I think last year, and Lonnie's talked about this numerous times, is last year was one of the first years that we kind of held the course in hiring. There wasn't this 5 and 6 and 7 additions to our certified staff. So, and also there was definitely a little bit of a lowering of our classified staff.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
I think this is one that, you know, there has been action taken. Because I know
Absolutely.
we have reallocated and moved our resources around really well. You know, that has enabled us not to hire so much.
It's been a different
So,
philosophy, of
uh-huh.
course, but it's working. One thing I want to add with this is that this time it says 1.6 certified, 60% over state funding. But as you guys know, when we did that work on the stabilization, we were much more than 60% over. We were more than 100% over what the reimbursement from the state is, because we pick up all the benefits and everything else. That's more of a, that shouldn't really say funding, it really should say numbers of staff.
Yeah.
Over.
Yeah. And
Okay.
another example of this, Chairman Guthrie, is also, you know, I had a missing position for a couple years. And I had a missing social studies teacher, and the high school gave me one of theirs. So that's another practice that we've been doing lately is, you know, if someone resigns or retires or leaves, is it automatic that we have to replace that position? We look at that now, and we question that now. So that's a very different way of doing business than we did in the past. And also, where there's a little bit of an overage, maybe that school or level can give something to another level. John?
And that's also happened at the administrative level. So for example, when Dave Palmer retired, I replaced 2 positions, the assistant superintendent and head of HR. Because I know there's a loud voice out there that says, you know, we're paying administrators too much, we need to cut that. And when you look at our overage, it's actually about 30% compared to 100% in our certified staff. So I just want you to know that's a misnomer, that we have made those cutbacks in the administration.
Yeah, thanks.
So as an example with dual immersion, back up to the top, you'll see that many of the things that we were talking about at that time have become will be your discussion as I think you're talking about DI in April, is that not right, in a learning session, dual immersion? And so we talked about way back then, what about the possibility of a magnet school? What about the idea of the tracking for secondary? Are they going to be on an AP track or not? Are they going to be on a double AP track or a single AP track? We were just trying to get a handle on the intricacies of the program and the goals of the program. Where are you going? What do you want to do with it? Can we keep adding the staff at the rate we've been adding? And that was definitely a huge concern of ours, is that the potential costs of running the program as it expanded too, when it went into a double at kindergarten, when it doubled at kindergarten, can we keep hiring that many people and be fiscally responsible? So that was a big concern of ours as well. And then when does a kid stay in dual immersion? When do they not stay in dual immersion? Those questions are still being asked. There's still concerns of that. If I get a dual immersion kid at my school who's critically below in a number of areas, is dual immersion the right program for them? You know, those questions are still being asked and talked about and discussed at the level. Yes. Penny.
Thank you. Before we move into what you just started talking about, going back to the staffing, I'm not really privy to all the information, but the early retirement packages that are coming on, how is that going to maybe affect our bottom line?
Well,
And does it have anything to do with this?
It doesn't necessarily have something just to do with dual immersion. It's a district-wide thing, I would think. Just from my standpoint, and I'm not the one to necessarily talk about it, Mike and Lonnie could probably answer your question better, but it is a huge issue here for us And, you know, this would be right up there too, is that, you know, there's a potential of us having 40% of our staff in the next 4 to 5 years be eligible for retirement. So the early retirement program that Mike has put forward, and there is some response to that from what I hear. I don't know exactly how many, or, but that's going to be a thing where, in terms of saving money, the potential is great. And Mike, I don't know if you want to answer, or
I
Lonnie.
would add one thing to it, and the thing that I would add to it is, how it would relate to this is kind of what Ken started by saying, Vinny, is when we do staff, it is completely different than just a couple of years ago. Every single one of those positions we look at the number of students in that department. What we're not gonna do is we're not gonna deconstruct any current programs. So could it go to this? It could. And, you know, when we had a couple of years ago, I think we were looking at in 4 years dual learning, if we kept it the same, there's 27 additional employees. So, you know, we're trying to do something about that so that the program can stay vibrant. But if we need to add additional employees, which we will in a number of areas, language, dual immersion, because we're committed to making sure that the kids in dual immersion continue, those would be positions that, as we weigh them, could be used. I think that's your question.
Yeah, basically, I just feel like maybe there's actually an opportunity, this was developed almost 2 years ago.
Right.
Maybe there's a little bit of a new opportunity for some funding because.
No, I agree. The only caveat is, when you do something like that, you don't really get to pick which employees are going, and so there's some employees, we have to refill their exact position. Others, at least we're taking a look at them in a different way.
Mike?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the early retirement incentive program is not really a program primarily for saving money for the district. I mean, that's a secondary benefit, but the primary benefit was really to look at those positions that we have at some of the schools that we know we're heavy in, and if we can get some of those people to retire, then maybe we can not have to replace those positions and bank those positions for, 1 or 2 years when we know we're gonna have to take care of things like this.
Also from an HR standpoint, and again, the board necessarily hasn't approved that initiative, but if it were to go through, then, from an HR standpoint, what it does is allows us, what these guys are saying, is to shift and reallocate positions. So if we have a need in dual immersion, and that's where our need is, then we can move the staff to the need.
I think there was another question somewhere.
I was gonna go back to dual immersion, so if there's more comment on.
Yeah, because Molly's done a number of presentations to the community about the path of dual immersion, things that we're looking at, and if there's any questions, Molly's definitely the one to talk to.
Well, my one comment was just kind of, you had talked about, should students make that tough choice of whether or not I continue in the program, or maybe look at dropping out of the program. And one of the changes that we made last year is moving away from the traditional, or the original idea of looking at the 2-track model for the high school, which would probably create some very small classes that we may or may not be able to offer if the numbers are so low. And that would be probably in English classes outside of DI and also in DI if we have 3 different offerings for the same level, for example. And so what's happened now is that students can kind of filter in with other students that are at the same level as them, and it's more optional. So they don't have to say, okay, I really want to stay in band, or I really want to do this elective, and so therefore I have to drop out of DI. But maybe this semester I don't want to take the social studies offering in Spanish because I want to take some other elective. But I still want to maintain that Spanish language study. And so they don't have to make that tough choice of, DI or no DI. They can go semester by semester and have the option of language and social studies or both.
So another one right there is substitutes, and we had a huge impact, and John probably has the numbers right off the top of his head, but in the very first year, one of the things that we did that had a really positive impact financially for the district is when we looked at the cost of our substitutes, our guest teachers, we were looking at close to $600,000 per year. And one of the things that we found out right away is, man, we're getting subs for everything, every time. One of the things that we looked at right away is if a coach has a game in the afternoon, and they need to be gone. Sometimes they were only missing one actual class a period, but they had to take a half-day sub. So right away, we started doing things at the school level, like covering that class. Instead of hiring a half-day sub to cover maybe 1 to 2 classes out of a whole afternoon schedule, so that made a huge impact. Another thing we started looking at is, do we need a guest teacher for every single parapro position that we have out there? So we limited that number as well. And John, could you talk about
Yeah,
that first,
last year,
all
the
of last
principals
year?
did a great job of doing that, and making sure that they really did need a sub in the classroom. They saved off the previous year, 2 years ago, last year, they saved roughly 562 days. This year, we're back to the same levels we were 3 years ago. But keep in mind, we've added a lot of extra PD, professional development around the math program, things like that, so that to be at the same level with the amount of professional development that we've done this year that we were 2 years ago, we haven't gained. So the principals have done a good job of, one, last year they dropped us by 562 days, which was a savings to the district. But now we're still at where we were at levels 3 years ago.
We used 130 sub days just for that math training when Jonathan Granfer was here, because every single elementary teacher got that. So I actually still think by the end of the year, we'll be down from 2 years ago. It may not be 500, because we actually, we had some work to do on that.
We're within 5 days to the date where we were 2 years ago,
So we're about at that 600K
actually 3 years ago.
mark?
Um,
I mean, just to equate it to what's,
Yeah, I'm just looking at the actual guest teachers, so I don't know if we're paying them more than we did 2 years ago. I don't think we are, so we didn't increase that pay, although our guest teachers are paid pretty well compared to the rest of our region.
So some of our concerns were, sorry about that, some of our concerns were, the district also, when they have trainings, many of our teachers are gone for a full day. So one of the things that I know Patty McLean has done and other district committees have done is they're meeting after school for short periods of time instead of a full day. So they'll meet more often, but maybe after school instead of for a full day, which takes the teacher out of the classroom, which increases the sub costs as well. So that's another additional thing that we looked at to try to limit that cost of our guest teachers. And then here's another one, is a good example right here. We had 2 roving sub positions, which were full-time positions, paid as a full-time salary, and I think both of those are
Both of those are
Certified,
gone.
Yeah, they were certified.
teachers, and we absorbed those, because our pool got bigger. When the economy wasn't as good, we had a lot more people willing to do it. So both of those actually went into teaching positions through attrition, so they didn't lose their jobs, but that saved us, over $150,000 a year on those 2 positions alone.
And then also you'll see there that it says hire new sub-coordinator if leaving, or have a software system in place. So we do have a sub-coordinator named Karen Bellin, and we have a software system in place now called ASOP, which works to coordinate that. So if Karen were to leave, the idea is that potentially that software system could do the job. And so, we've been implementing that as we go this year, and there were little rough spots, but it's working much better right now in our schools. So we had a few bumpy roads at the very start of it, but that's the kind of thing that we talked about, and then you can see that a lot of those things are already reality in our district. We already have the ASOP program, and it's fully online now. We still need our staff and our people at each school to still buy into the system a little bit more, but the transition has been huge in a very short period of time.
They're doing better.
Oh, yeah.
Every week, and so our hand placement of subs has continued to go down weekly, and the system has continued to rise on its placement of subs. So it's doing exactly what we want it to do. We're moving the graph perfectly. Karen's involvement has steadily gone down. ASOP's has steadily gone up. Secretaries is slowly going down. So we're always going to have those hand placements that we have to do, but the system is doing exactly what we hoped it would do over time.
What I would add to that, Warren, is Mrs. Bellin has talked to us, and she has a job, has talked to us about the fact that over the next few years, she is going to be retiring. There was a cost to the software, but if it's implemented correctly, that's why we took a full year to do it. that that will be a pretty significant cost savings because we won't have a full-time person.
The annual subscription is $8,000, and we currently pay right around $40 for the positions.
So, Fritz, it seems as though a lot of this is right on target. It's a 2010, 2012. I mean, I see a lot of
Exactly.
progression. One thing, before we move on to the.
Sure.
But
Next page.
but before we do that, I kind of like, what stuck out for me was the reference to staff is overwhelmed with Promethean's RTI, you know. I thought, what's going on with, I know that staff is overwhelmed. And have we taken any action, I mean, has there been any action there?
Well-
Or is that slow go?
I think, just personally, I just had 4 meetings in the last 2 days with my staff, and we're very focused right now on one thing. And one of the things that is very common in education is that the system is oftentimes geared to make sure it doesn't change. Okay? I've been in education for about 28 years now, and that's one of the things that it's geared towards that. It's geared to not change, because that's a gut reaction and a knee-jerk reaction with some staff members, is that, you know, and it's especially hard if you're good. If you're a really good, solid performing school in a district, change is even harder. But one of the things that we just talked about at Ad Council yesterday is we need to really, really focus on 21st century learning. Not teaching, but learning. And we really reiterated that as an entire administrative council yesterday. And so this topic is not new. It just came up again yesterday in our Ad Council. There's always stuff going on. And one of the things that I brought up yesterday is that even every time we institute something like the ASOP program, it does affect the way we do business at the ground level, at the school level, on the front lines. But the nice thing about that is we're getting better about that. We're not just saying, here, it's September, here you go, it's a whole new system. What we're doing now is we institute software, we practice it, we work it, and then we institute it over time. So usually we're starting software programs in January instead of September. And then we practice them, we train them prior to that, so that's become much better. But our focus primarily, one sec, Catherine, is that we're becoming an IB school. That has to be our mission. I'm trying to get everyone on board of that one bus right there, because that's so huge, because it encompasses, it is our vehicle for 21st century skills. Yeah,
That's great.
yeah, because
I'm
our
excited
staff
to hear
needs
that.
that.
I guess my question is in kind of putting it out there to you guys, looking ahead a year or 2 years, do we have anything out there that we're thinking about starting next year as of programs or software or programs or anything that you know of that are going to be started next year?
Or state initiatives?
Well,
like
this
that?
is what I would say to that. That goes to the conversation Chris was just saying that we had. And, you know, I think there's agreement is, you know, we have to take a break from adding new programs at some point in time. And so, now, that being said, if you look at our strategic plan, one of the things in the strategic plan that is coming up are some committees to look at IB at the elementary level and at the high school level. You know, I guess our feeling about when we first did the strategic plan 4 years ago was that we wanted to get it right before we look at the others. But I just have to tell you, Catherine, for the sake of teachers, you know, I don't want to bring more programming in right now. I want to focus on what they've got, because everything we add to them there's just a perception that how much more can I take? And I guess it's not even a perception, I guess it's a reality. So to answer your question, no. But to extend your question to the next couple of years, you know, the boards will make those decisions.
Right, so there's nothing on the horizon, I guess, because you brought up IB. I'm just saying if there, just for example, this is totally hypothetical, if there was something out there like PYP or DP or some other program, and there were teachers sent out on an exploratory training or
Well,
something,
there's gonna be one this summer for Avid,
would,
so that's a good, you know.
yeah, okay, so let's say Avid, exploratory training for Avid this summer. Is that considered, though, bringing a new program? Because
Absolutely.
No, I don't mean sending the
Oh.
exploration, not sending the committee. I know that Avid would be absolutely a new program, but sending the committee, is that
No.
seen as being, you know?
That isn't seen as bringing a whole new program.
Okay.
I've talked to Mr. Peters, what we would like to do, and
Right.
I'm following board, board goals.
Mhm.
I think, this isn't new. So
Right.
this summer, now, it isn't, I'll tell you what it does do, there's a cost to it. So this summer, I've talked to Mr. Peters a couple months ago about putting maybe 3 teachers together, 3 teachers from the high school. I've talked to Mr. Durgatz to do, and the way that you explore Avid is you go through a week-long training. That's how you do it. So if you're a teacher. So I guess we're going to need some direction from the board to say, okay, do we still want to continue these things or not? Is the exploratory committee seen as a new program? No. But if you're sending this is what I would say, if you're sending an exploratory committee to something and you're spending, in the case of Avid, because I've been to Avid training twice, I
Right,
had it
yeah.
in my school, it's very expensive. So if we're not considering it as a program, why are we considering it as an exploratory move? I mean, those are the decisions that the board's gonna have to make. Because those are not brand new topics, that's the issue that we have here in front of us. That topic right there is 3 or 4 years old,
Right.
right? As is International Baccalaureate on both sides. So it's one of the reasons we're doing this today, so that, we can lay out, it kind of goes hand in hand with when we're looking at the stabilization cap. Who is the district really, and what are we spending our money on, and what do we want to do?
Right. I mean, I guess where I was going is thinking about this no new programs, which I think is probably a prudent thing because we hear that from, teachers. Actually, I'm just going to stop right
Well, the Goal 2 committee, which is rigor and a rigorous education
Yeah.
for all students, the Goal 2 committee did have a presentation of Avid, and we really came out of it and recommended that the MYP program, along with a number of other things at the high school level, is where we wanted to go. We really did not focus on Avid after our presentation. We know what the program does, we know how it helps certain students, but we really focused and said in that committee that at that time, and again, that was 2 years ago, or even 2.5 years ago, that our first goal was to look at the MIP program. And as Bill Shell spoke the other night here at the board, he said this is a huge undertaking. And now, I'll tell you the reason I had 4 meetings with my staff is because we have to change our structure completely. And they understand that. So I have a very tight committee working to completely look at our master schedule and redo the whole thing. Because our master schedule will not accommodate IB in its current form. So it's going to be a very big framework undertaking at the middle school level.
If I could just add one more thing, and then I won't be like Kathy, I'll be quiet on this topic. If NYP is done right, and you have full buy-in at the school, like Mr. Peters is working so hard to do, so that people believe in the program, not just comply with it, there's less need for Avid than we would have had several years ago before we had IB. Because IB at the middle years level is an umbrella under all kids. And the things that they're teaching, they're not exactly the same, but many of the principles are similar.
Yeah.
It also, IB also encompasses PBL.
Yeah.
Those are linked very tightly, and a lot of times people don't understand that. They're not two totally separate programs, but that, a lot of times that's the way folks look at it. The other thing is that there are new things that are already built into how we do business, and in other words, readjusting how we do, and that is curriculum adoption. So whenever you're adopting curriculum, those are new things, but that's something that traditionally we always do. We're always looking at our curriculum to upgrade it. So you have science adoption coming up. We've looked at spreading that out, and so that elementary people aren't hit with a new adoption every year. Because if you think about the past, they had math one year, science the next year, language arts the next year, and so forth. Now there'll be a little bit of a gap. They'll have another year with the math adoption before we actually put in the new science, but we are going to be looking at science adoption. So those are
Those are new things, but they're not really new things.
Right.
Because they're
right.
in the normal cycle.
But it is
of-
change.
Yeah, got
It
it.
is change.
Okay.
Ms.
Okay.
Fair?
I do have one more thing I have to sorry. I had the privilege, it was either 7 or 8 years ago, to be sent by the Lynn County School District to Denver, Colorado, with a team of people to investigate Abbott. I was
With
an
Ron
administrator.
Martinez?
Huh?
Was Ron there?
Right, I
Yeah.
went with Ron and 2 other teachers.
It was very favorable.
And I really think that Abbott is a great program. My caution at this point is, if we're sending a team this summer, then it seems that we should be seriously considering implementing the program, not just spending more money to send another team.
That was my point.
Yeah, so I want to just kind of like,
And you believe me, I was the first principal in Idaho, I don't know if you knew this, the only principal in
Yeah.
Idaho that had an Abbott
it's a
school.
fantastic program, but
But it targets certain
Not
kids.
doing well.
It targets certain kids. I
Yeah.
mean, it is a beneficial program. But I think when we start to look at what we're doing in the district, we just need to reconsider all the voices from the past and say, are we still on that track or are we on some other track right now?
fine. And if it's valuable to send a team, let's do it. But if
Right.
we're just doing it to send people, let's not do that.
Right, thanks.
That's,
Thanks, Penny.
Okay, and you can see like even on the bottom there, that, that one's pretty gone.
Yeah, we changed the
All right.
comments still, so.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the purple section.
Just, Fritz, I'm probably going to, in about 1:15, just so that you know, I'm gonna move on to Patty's
Great.
agenda item. Just
Okay.
to give you some guidance.
You can go all the way down to Silver Creek High School. Very, very different now. Completely different. You know, there were some good discussions about it there. The Silver Creek High School principal was in those meetings. And, you know, it's hard to even communicate on what we said here because Silver Creek is its own school now. It's becoming accredited, or if it already has been accredited, yeah. So
Provisional accreditation.
provisional accreditation. So there's really, you know, here's another one too. Curriculum committees going on simultaneously, rotating curriculum teams. You see that that's already different now too. So again, as we do our work as an administration team, these things are changing constantly. And you can see that we're already, even if we had a concern on something here, there's already a new pattern, as John was just discussing. Technology and education and academics, you know, there was a concern about low PTR in a number of classes, and the high school's already addressing that as well. And sometimes we have to cancel classes. If there's only 4 or 5 kids that sign up, you just can't economically keep doing that. So I know that Mr. Jervich at the high school and Lynn, jump in anytime if you want to, but I know they've made a number of staffing shifts where there just weren't enough people to really consider that program. And then they've shifted some by creating classes for senior project, et cetera. And then there's also up there is the residential outdoor environmental school, which is a middle school program that we love, but you know, we got to put that on the table too and question that. The costs are pretty extensive. It gets up to about $50K. There's a question of the stipends for the staff and their time that they put in. So are we going to phase it out, do a walking trip here in town? Is it critical to this district and to our school that this program is an emphasis of what we're doing here?
So I'd like to add to what Fritz says, is that shows the true objectivity of this committee, because environmental camp is something that Mr. Peters doesn't want to give up, and we're not saying we should give it up, but even that, which is, you know, and you know, my daughter went this year, it was fantastic, but even that, as the facilitator of the committee, it still got on the list. So I do think that shows that everyone was working together to really show the true challenges, not just, well, let's don't talk about this one because we like it.
You know, and another aspect of the whole plate issue and something, Steve, that you mentioned just a second ago, are community partnerships. And every time we jump into a community partnership, it changes our life. A perfect example of that is, you know, we have this community partnership with Mountain Rides. It's been booming. The kids are riding the city bus. Okay, now we have a horrendous situation of kids going towards Albertsons after school, and so we're trying to hire a crossing guard. So every time we do things, it does have this offsetting capability, which makes us focus on potentially different change. But the kids love it. The kids absolutely love it because they can walk straight down to Mountain Rides bus and go straight up to Ketchum. Instead of getting on a bus, go over to the high school, come back over, stop at every place to drop the kids off. And so, all it's done is give our community more choice. But there's a lot of concerns about it because there's not as much behavior control on the buses, and there's also some crossing the highway issues.
That's what I was gonna ask you, because, when I've done that before at the high school, usually when I'm in a community partnership with someone, then all of a sudden there's a discipline issue, and now the community agency doesn't want to take responsibility for that, they want me to.
Right.
Even though they're offering the service, they want me to control it, and I have no control, so I was just wondering if you were having some of those issues.
Well, the funniest thing I had was where the director of Mountain Rides called me and said, "Hey Fritz, we got some real concerns about the behavior of some middle schoolers on the bus." And I'm like, "Kick them off the bus. Kick them off the bus.
Well,
It's
I mean,
okay."
I was
seriously,
riding the school bus.
So if
Yeah.
you're on the bus, actually, I will just tell you, my daughter takes that, she has ballet 2 days a week. And so she gets on at middle school and goes over to the community campus. And this is the reality. If our students are not behaving or creating an environment the same as the rest of the riders, because we do have that partnership, we don't pay a lot for it, but they should disallow them to ride the bus, at least for some amount of time, so you can sure level a little bit.
And it's protecting the citizens that ride that bus as well. Catherine?
I'm kind of changing the
Great.
subject here. Do we have Saturday school?
I don't think, is the high school still doing it? Yeah.
So are you
we-
still doing it?
Yeah, we don't do it, but they do it.
So, what is that?
For lower
Well,
level disciplinary issues.
Yeah,
I
disciplinary.
didn't hear that.
It's
It's
for
an
lower level.
opportunity. It's an
Yeah,
opportunity.
it's a lower level, because when you have disciplinary issues, you want to deal with them at the lowest level possible.
Yep.
So it's, instead of suspensions, things like that, it's a lower level consequence for students that, are either cut class or, they're not
Yeah.
huge offenses, but they're definitely affecting their education. And so we ask students to give up their own time when they take away from school time.
Who supervises that?
We have Pete Namas is our supervisor. There's about 3 Saturdays a month.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Fritz?
You've been
Yes.
doing that for a few years.
I want to talk just briefly about technology and education and academics. And I don't know if this falls into the category or not, but I just know how things go over time in regards to software licenses, hardware. I know we have cycles for hardware and this and that, but I'm wondering if, maybe Tech is taking a look at this. I'm sure there are software applications out there that still might require licenses, that maybe one teacher's using, or 2 teachers are using, or not used at all. And I don't know if that, maybe it's not the proper assumption, but I'm just wondering if
No,
there's.
I don't think so. I think that if people aren't using them, then we move on from them. Jerry's
Yeah.
here, he can tell you.
In terms of our site licenses, essentially we have our Novell networking licenses, our antivirus licenses that we put on all the computers, and those are ubiquitous. People don't really have a choice,
Right.
use it or not use it. Now, we do have licenses for Microsoft Office. There's an educational license we get with them that gives us automatic upgrades for any new operating systems that they come up with, and for any new versions of Microsoft Office. And those are used quite a bit. There's a price tag on that. I don't remember the exact amount for that Microsoft Office license. We feel like it gives us a lot of protection. And the alternative to that, and one of the questions that will be coming up very soon, is that with the one-to-one rollout that the state is providing, that's going to change potentially some of our licensing and some of our use of equipment and hardware. And so that's something that all the tech directors in the state are kind of scratching their heads about, exactly how that's going to come out. There seems to be a fair chance that might actually end up being an Apple product being provided to all the high school students and staff.
An Apple product, because I was just at the state superintendent's meeting, and they were still talking about PCs.
Well, it's an open market, and Apple went after Maine very strongly, and for 10 years almost now has been winning that contract. If they come after us as strongly, and that's the suspicion of what's going to happen from the tech directors, is that, but regardless of who wins the contract, the state's going to pay for the software on all those computers. And so then that may change what we want to do in terms of software. But the point is, and I think this echoes, what you're asking, we have to continually look at our software and what the investment in it is.
And I'm talking about just maybe little things. Yeah, educational test preps and stuff
That's
that maybe.
exactly it. Like, we just had a Study Island, which is one of those learning software programs that a lot of teachers liked. They found better ones now. So the site license renewal came up. My teacher, who kind of heads that, went around and checked with everyone. Anyone using Study Island? Anybody at all? And one teacher was, but she said, well, I'm actually using this more now, so we didn't renew it. So that happens all the time. Absolutely. Because we found that we like Alex now as a math supplemental program rather than Appengia or another one. So now it's actually IXL. I'm wrong. It's not even Alex anymore. It's IXL. So we constantly shift in that. And most of the time we're just buying a seat or a number of seats per year. And if I see that there's a big transition and people aren't using it, we just move on to another
So
software.
that's more at the school level.
Yeah.
That's not something that tech is trying.
Right.
So I guess,
And that's budgetary to my
Yeah.
school, yeah.
okay.
The last one on this page, I think, is a really interesting one that you folks, as a board, should look at. And I think it's something to just think about. We did talk about a middle school program internally. That was a recommendation almost 15 years ago, or 12 years ago, when a consultant came to the district about creating some type of middle school, alternative school. I don't know that that's a huge issue for us now. I don't think we've expelled anyone for quite some time. This year especially, we haven't had anyone. So I think it's something to just consider, because we did talk about at the time, what are we doing with expelled students? We've made changes at the Alternative Settings Center. The contracts that we give students in a pre-expulsion hearing, how valid are they with someone who's 12? You give them a contract, boy, this is a contract, you're signing this contract, and then how valid is that? It is kind of a last chance thing, but by the time, if we have to come to a board for an expulsion hearing, usually those contracts are, if they're a tardy or something, we're not going to bring a kid to the board. But, maybe the whole topic of expulsion would be a good topic to just talk about at some point in time, because that's a big deal. So, I think we're one of the few districts that does offer our expelled kids something, and I think that's really a neat thing, because a lot of districts, once you're expelled, you're just gone, go, get away. We offer them something. I think that's an important thing.
And a middle school, say a middle school alternative option would be a new program.
That would be a whole new program, and I just don't see that, we felt there was a bigger need for that 4 or 5 years ago. It was a hot topic, and now, I don't know that we need to do that.
Also
'cause-
different philosophy. It would be a new program with different philosophy for us to start identifying students as a true alternative or, at an earlier age, rather than finding out if we can find the best program for them first.
And then in the green, you'll see that we have an extended music program. I really feel like this has answered a lot of it through our work the last few years. We have a very good program, and I do want to let the board know that I sent out an email today, and I'm sure you've all heard about our band director, Tony Randall, and he's really recovering well. He had his breathing tube taken out. His wife keeps sending me messages, and I'm forwarding them to our staff and to Lonnie and John. And
Lonnie's gonna be over there tomorrow.
yeah, so we've already had people go down there and give him big posters and flowers and photos of all the kids. And this is our symbol for him, because he did that, and that was a huge thing that allowed the doctors to understand that he was neurologically intact. So that's our deal. And she sent that today, that's her new favorite symbol. So all the kids in the band did that picture for him with all of their thumbs up. So it's kind of a way of saying, hey, we know you're
He'll have the
still
arm recovery. Broke ribs, his collarbone, his leg, And so, you know, I do think a neurologist saw yesterday that they believe there's full recovery there, there's no damage, but he will have a long recovery.
When is the jamboree in Anaheim?
That's really something that the high school is working on right now, and then if you want to mention that, I don't know, it is in April.
It's
in
April
12th or something, or?
12, 13, 14, I think.
And so that's, you know, there's no way Tony's going. Mama said that. She said, I'm moving my dead body. Is he going down to that thing? So the wife said, there's no way. Michelle, she said, he's not going. So the kids are, I think they're paid for, and so there's going to have to be some internal discussions of what we do with that. So it's a big concern. And especially that supervisory piece that a teacher gives you rather than a volunteer. But, you know, in terms of our extended music program, our programs are growing. We have a wonderful relationship with the high school and sharing these staff members. It's tough on them, I will tell you. But, you know, Rebecca Martin in orchestra, just the orchestra is bigger than it's ever been. She's a fabulous violinist and a great teacher. The kids love her. A huge change in that area. Both Tony and Max have wonderful programs that are just expanding all the time. Our 7th and 8th grade band is huge together when they sit together, and they are really talented. So in terms of our music program at the secondary level, the elementary has always been very solid with wonderful people, but it's really a good program. Yes, John?
I went down to the honors, the honors band and orchestra and choir for the middle school level down at O'Leary. And I got to tell you, that orchestra, I think we had 18 kids on that orchestra, of the whole makeup of the honor orchestra. It was amazing. I mean, it was amazing. I felt like I was sitting listening to the Philharmonic. They were outstanding. And the band was, and so was the choir, but that orchestra really stood out. And we had a lot of kids from Woodruff. We made up almost half of the orchestra.
There's a lot to do here
Yeah.
for long term, Fritz.
There is. You know, and even things like test prep, a lot of that is part of our goal too, in the rigorous curriculum where we have more test preparation courses at the high school. We have people that are, our new college counselor is so much more involved in a lot of that. Reading right there, we were very, very deficient at the middle school, in my opinion, in terms of a true reading program. Now we have 4 sections of Read 180. It is a great program, in my opinion. Kids are making huge gains. We've had quotes from kids saying, "Where was this all my life? I can read." I mean, it's really a funny thing to hear the kids, because when you have an 11-year-old say, "Where was this all my life?" you know that they're really understanding how much progress they've made. So it's a great program, and we love it. Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead, Catherine.
Are we still, or are the schools still doing the CFES? And I'm not sure what, I know what that stands for, I'm not sure what any use.
That was No Excuses University.
Oh, okay.
I'm over here getting some crib notes on
We are still doing it.
So is that pretty heavy at the elementary
It is,
schools?
they're elementary programs.
They're elementary programs, okay.
What we did do, you know, there were 2. There was the College Aspirations Project, and No Excuse University was the first one that went to Woodside. So
Right.
what they have done is the principals have gotten together and they've kind of toned them, and so that there's more commonality with them than there was.
Okay.
And it is at the middle school, but I'll tell you, definitely it's a back burner program for us. We have a lot of things that are about college in our school,
Right.
and we have a small committee that still works on it, but it's not like a, front lines committee at all. It's really kind of taken a backseat to IB stuff and the work that we're doing there. But it's still viable, it's still there, and there's still, a good emphasis of a college program in our school and pushing for that. And we still devote certain days to it, but it's not running the school by any means.
Right, okay, thanks.
Senior projects is here, and that's a big topic that's on the plate still, because we're looking at how the MYP 10th grade project, which is the culminating part of our whole 5-year IB program in the 10th grade, and how that's going to relate to senior projects. So that's one of the biggest questions the high school has, and Jane, our Dr. Walther, our MYP coordinator, has in terms of working that out with the high school and how that finally comes to be. And because some kids, we're looking at an internal document for those kids that finish the 5-year program, have all their language, do a good senior project, that they would get some type of transcript notification. So we're working on all those things as we speak.
But I don't see them as contradictory. I really believe
Exactly.
as we use project-based learning through all 13 grades that we teach, I really think that they will complement each other. When they do a 10th grade one, that's a springboard to even a better 12th grade one. And I said, the board saw this year, our senior projects this year were the best ever. I mean, that was a phenomenal day over there. I know I saw you over there, Paul, but, you know, our senior projects are doing, I think what this is, more rigor needed. Well, they are becoming more rigorous. And they're also becoming more, if I can, I think the word would be elaborate. I mean, the kids are taking on a lot. They're making movies, you know, the movie about Marley and just some amazing things. So if we do it right, they will complement each other. You know, they won't be in conflict with each other.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
All right, it's essentially, senior project is essentially one class per semester. And what I see coming out, my daughter's a senior, so I saw a lot of that energy. And to me, yeah, the MYP project is one thing, but the senior projects are, and for them, it's part of their rite of passage
No,
to
absolutely.
the end of their career in high school. And it pushes them to do, you know, now's my chance to show my stuff.
And I speak for 2 seniors at my house, and their mentorship relationships were absolutely phenomenal. To have a non-educator community expert in a field that they wanted to learn about, it changed their lives. It was just a great way for them to step out of that little protected shell of the little parent and the teacher role, but just meeting a new person and getting to know them and work with them is very, very powerful. I agree.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I don't want to cut you short, but I do want to have a discussion amongst the board a little bit, and Fritz and Bonnie and Mike. I mean, where do we go from here? I don't want to see this shelved again. I mean, a lot of it's been done. I'm not saying it was shelved and nothing's been done. Obviously, a lot's taken place. So, I know that, Lonnie, you mentioned that you might, that you would do, update this.
Yeah, I think that's what we want to do at this point in time. And, you know, the tough part about this, Steve, just to your point was, we got the work done, we're doing so many things, and here's what we said, okay, now that we've got it done, what do we do with it? I mean, how do we use it? And interestingly enough, I mean, not really because this meeting was today, is, you know, our meeting yesterday in the ad council, I think is bringing us back home, just saying, okay, now we know what we can do with this, because we're gonna point our ship in one direction. I'm gonna tell you what that direction is, and the board has given me that. That's what I have to tell you. It's to develop 21st century learners. So what I guess we want to do with this is update it. Fritz, I don't know how you feel, but it should be complementary of narrowing our focus, not making our focus bigger around developing 21st century environments, and including how do we develop the conversation yesterday, how do we develop our teachers to be 21st century learners with kids. So I guess the way we want to use this is we want to look at this in that context, under that lens, and continue to work on it. I do think what we'll end up doing with this thing for the board, and we'll send it to you, as Fritz and I and the committee can work on it, of adding another column, which would be an update to these, where are we now? It's a where are we now column with this. And that will narrow the focus some, because some of these things we've done, or we've had pretty good progression in, and others we still have to work on.
Because I think we've identified, a great job, by identifying all these programs and even giving some of the suggestions.
Anything to add to that, Fritz, Mike?
You know, I would just like to reiterate that, just looking through this list, you know, we have looked at this for a long time, but a lot of these things that we're already addressing, carryover budgets we've already addressed, you know, food service, and we're already there. Counselor, social workers, we're already there. So I mean, there's a lot of these things throughout here that we've already done naturally.
It should be a living document, though, because we do have more things, you know, to Catherine's point, you know, we have a lot of things in front of us, and we need to put those on there. So if you look on this thing, do we have IB as a separate category on here?
No, that's what's so
And
weird.
So that's strange for us, because we were in that process already. I think as we update it, there are some things that we're still working on and doing that maybe came on the heels of this, that we've got to incorporate. So this is an attempt to look at our district globally, kind of like that stabilization cap work was, to really look at, honestly, you know, where's that money going, what's it being used for? And this is an attempt to look at our district more globally.
So I've got Don, Catherine, and Paul.
I was just going to comment that I really, looking at this, and I think it's great that over the last 2 years, what's been accomplished, and I really see this as being kind of a partner document to our strategic plan that is a tool for the strategic plan. And we get our updates on that, which I think are helpful. Same idea, I think, you know, maybe twice a year, get updates on where we are with this. And I think it's great, you guys, you didn't just write this and then it sat there. You know, maybe it sat there and you didn't realize what you were doing, but when you pulled it back out, you're like, hey, we did this, we did this, we did this.
We
And
did.
that's good.
It brought the
That's what we
topics
want.
forward, Don, and so you know, this maybe one didn't sit on my desk like the strategic
Sure.
plan did, but once you have this committee and you bring them all forward, then you start working on those areas, right? I mean, they're in front of you.
Right, and pulling this back out really does make you look at this, look at the strategic plan, and kind of get that conversation of where are we going and what are we doing, and this sets the framework for us. I think it's a great report document, it's a great, more or less, audit of what we've been doing. So,
I think it'd be great to get the committee together again. I know they'd love to do that, and put them together and really go over that 1/4 column. We have to landscape it though, and put in that 4th column and just kind of have literally a couple of sessions where we really get through and look where we are, and then put things in that are new, and just kind of make it a little bit more viable current document than it is. I think
sure,
that would be a
maybe
great idea.
reevaluate what you guys set out to do that might not have been done and what the hurdles were. And
Right.
It should be the same thing, it
Yeah.
should still include not just what we've accomplished, but the challenges that still in play. But I think we could get it done by, and present it to the board in early summer sometime, and don't you think that's?
Yeah, or a summer
reasonable?
session would be fine.
Sure.
Love to do it.
Catherine?
Well, I was just gonna say, and I was looking at Linda, I think we were kind of agreeing here, that maybe when you guys are, you know, get back together, if it could be, and I'm not trying to put more work on anybody, but grouped into, you know, academic, you know, programs that we're doing, because this Lighten the Plate has a lot of things in it. It's got the RTI and milepost and CBM, which I don't even know what that is.
Classroom-based measures. Classroom-based measures or
Right.
assessment.
You know, IB, DI, you know, some of those, you know, the programs, and then we'll be adding Leader in Me and, I don't know, curriculum mapping, or adding some of those things, because it seems like we've got, under here, we've got program, you know, we've got some that are true programs, and then we have other things that need to be talked about.
Business as usual. Right?
Exactly, or things that, you know, we need to talk about, like the reduction of staffing costs. But if we get those programs, and maybe there's some of those in there that do the same thing,
Yeah,
that
the,
can
the
be,
interesting thing about this document, Catherine, is it really started out to
Yeah.
look at, because it was the first time we were really starting to look at what costs do we have in front of us that we have not anticipated, you know, that are ongoing and can balloon, and it turned into something different, more like what you're talking about. I mean, a forward view of it all. But I think the categorization of this, we're not doing it first.
but I think it's great, and you know, there's a lot of, you know, great recommendations, there's a lot of great stuff in here. Like you say, some of it probably can just be taken out because we've already done
Right.
some of it. You know, the high school going to semesters and the food and,
Right.
but, yeah, it's
Are you
great.
done, Catherine?
Yeah.
Paul's giving me the evil eyes.
Who said nothing to say, we said it all.
Well, I think you opened a serious bag of worms with me by handing me this one. This is a list of all the stipends that, you know, when I see that an assistant ninth basketball.
So is this personnel issues? that may-
Oh, no.
No, you're just talking about.
Oh, okay,
No,
all right.
I'm just- There's some serious money in some, being assistant coach for the 9th grade basketball team, for $800 more to get a head coach for the soccer team. Who decides what these amounts are?
It's all based on a percentage of the contract.
percentage
opposed
of
to-
their,
Individual employees' contract. It's all based on
their
like between.
teaching, what if they're not a teacher or working in the district?
Then I think
other
it's
than-
based on the starting salary or an average salary or something like that. Yeah. But it's based on like a assistant coach makes between 3% and 5% of the base contract, and a head coach makes between like 6% and 8%, and an assistant varsity high school is like, between 6% and 8%, something like that.
Okay, and like we have a choir advisor and we have a band advisor, is that not part of something our choir band teachers?
No, because this is all outside work.
Is this like going to Anaheim instead of?
It's all of that, you know, they do
Okay.
concerts and
Okay.
everything like
Yeah.
that. Now, I will tell you, you know, I mean, this actually should have been probably a companion piece to the stabilization cap, learning system that we had, where do we spend our money? Remember, the stabilization cap plus the stipends equal the full amount, the cost of teachers plus the stipend equal the full amount of the stabilization cap. But this is just information, you know, what we're trying to do is give the board a full view of who we are. And this is part of it. I will tell you, I've been doing some work with some of the Region 4 superintendents on stipends and what they look like in different school districts. And it looks similar, these look similar to, for instance, you know, this is how it works. Our teachers are making about 25% more than other certified teachers in the region. Our parapros are making about 65% more. Our guest teachers are making a higher percentage than that. And these stipends are similar to that. The reason I just wanted to look at them and compare them. And our school districts, these grow up, Mr. Bates, just so you know, historically with our salary scale. That's how you get there.
Yeah.
And there's also an experience factor in there, so a coach that's been coaching
Yeah.
for years gets
Yeah,
more than a brand
yeah,
new
so,
coach.
I mean, there's a comfort level with.
I still think we need to examine, and I think we need to look through this and say, well, how many, you know, if we have this coach and this coach, how many kids are they serving? Do we have to maintain each one of these or not maintain? And that's why it's on this list, if you'll remember, the top of the second page.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, the middle school band advisor gets $14,500 a year stipend.
Well, he's not a middle school,
No.
and that's a different thing.
That's an extra class.
That's an extra
That's an extra class.
So that's a zero, when we had a class,
Okay.
but the problem with this thing is it probably needs to be, kind of like what Catherine just talked about, there's probably some categories included in there. This is all extra payments. And included, for instance, Mr. Randall, who you were just talking about, it doesn't teach 5 grades, he teaches 6 grades. So it's a percentage of his base contract, and it's reflected in here. So it's not just an extra duty stipend.
Okay.
But this is what I would like the board, as you look at it, if you have questions, please call me, or please call Mike, so that we can, you know, look, yeah, probably, but, so that we can answer any questions or look at these a little deeper, and we're happy to have you do that.
But Paul, when we do make decisions on if we're gonna hire an extra soccer coach at the middle school program or the high school program, we always look at the number of students that it's serving. And if the number of students that it's serving justifies it, then absolutely we'll add an assistant coach to that. And the rule of thumb is somewhere around 15 kids per adult. You know, if it's more than that, then we'll look at adding another stipend or another.
If we do that, we should be willing to look at it and say, if we're not serving that many kids, do we maintain it?
And those were some of
Well,
our
the basketball team
recommendations.
only had, what, 12 players in it, and they had 2 coaches.
But you really have to have 2 coaches, though. You have to have a head coach and an assistant coach in those programs, just like the varsity team does and all the way through the schools.
Now, my point is this, if we're adding a coach because we have high numbers, that's a good thing, but at the end of that year, we should reevaluate that. It shouldn't just live there, you know, forever.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess that, I mean, I'm not criticizing anything, just asking. You know,
And that was our
as long as this
recommendation,
gets-
huh?
Yeah, as long as this gets looked at regularly to see if we're
Oh,
appropriate.
yeah, we're doing.
I think Mike and John would be more than happy to.
The stipends, we actually look at pretty closely every year.
Good, good.
Okay. So,
Anything else, Steve?
you know, just to thank you, a big thank you to you and Mike and Lonnie and the committee, and we look forward to, you know, seeing what you come up with in the summer and continually working on all this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good job, Lisa.
And great workshop.
Okay. So the next item of business today is the approval of the community involvement in textbook adoptions. And that's presented by Ms. Patty Holmes.
Okay, good afternoon,
Hello?
and nice snow today, it's pretty. Yeah, just as before, I think you've had a chance to look this over more or less. It was kind of the last revision was last night about 5 o'clock or something. And so I apologize if you haven't seen the most. So, any comments or questions?
I think, like you said, the last revision came out last night. I was able to review it a bit this morning. And I think there's been some, the improvements made are exactly that, improvements. And in my mind, it's a well-done document. I know Catherine's had a lot of input and has made a few changes, and I think they've been
Heather has as well.
Uh-huh.
Good improvements and appreciate the input.
So that's my opinion.
Sorry, I'm just looking, I had time to look over the beginning of it, but I didn't, because I only had a few minutes before the meeting.
And one of my questions is, I'm not sure, who is the author of this document? I mean, I hate to feel like it's my authorship alone, because it certainly isn't. On the other hand, is it a district document? And I think Chairman Guthrie made a comment about, well, let's kind of live with this and see what happens and what tinkering we may need to do down the road and kind of do the trial experience what really happens. Because the question is, when you interview people for jobs in second, it was a terrible question. We didn't get what we wanted.
Right, I guess that was my question too. Is this going to be a policy? Is this going to go into a policy?
I think it would be
or
more of a procedure.
Yeah, but it would still be, the board sets procedures and policies, so it would be probably a procedure under what our current policy for, curriculum adoptions and committee work, committee appointments. So if you're putting together committees, this could be a procedure doing that for whatever process you want it for. So if it's for curriculum adoption, committees for curriculum adoption, then this is the procedure that would go into that.
Right, I guess that would be my next question is, and we kind of talked about this last year about, there's lots of different committees that the district puts together, hiring committees and calendar committees and levy committees and whatever else we want, parent or community involvement. And do we want a standard, application,
That's where,
That's a good question.
do we want a standard application for all of the committees, or is this going to be, specifically for curriculum committees?
my take, and in response to Patty, was that let's give this a shot. Let's see what happens, how things work out. But no doubt there will be some tweaks or changes that need to be made.
So use it for
before we move
curriculum?
on.
Use it for curriculum committees and then see how it works and see if you want to use it
Yeah,
as a.
maybe it works great, and we can grow it to address other committees. I'm sorry.
Can I comment on
Penny,
this?
oh.
Sorry. And maybe this is still coming. Is there a kind of a procedure for evaluating the applications?
Do you want to look at this?
Sure,
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, if it's there, it's fine. That's to me is another step in this whole process.
Yeah, someone could share that with her. The answer is, it's to be viewed holistically. And there aren't any really like what I would do if I were interviewing, if I were looking for answers. I probably have in my mind some checklist. Did they mention these things? That tells me certain kinds of things about the applicant. And then we learn a lot of other stuff that's valuable too. This is not that way. this is really a kind of a composite, a holistic look at getting to know the person and trying to determine, how's this person going to be valuable and contribute to our overall goals for that curriculum area.
But the committee looks at it, right?
Thank you, Lonnie. Yes, I won't choose this, the board won't choose the person. The subject matter task force will review this, and the application, if you will, is confidential. It's not like for them to go out and say something about Molly's application. It is like, okay, we read them, and they're going to be the ones that collectively say, I think this is a good person.
I guess the way that sorry, John.
No, go
The
ahead.
way I'm looking at it is, on hiring committees, we have questions and we have a chart, a rating, 1 through 5 or 10 or whatever the number system is, and then at the end we tally it all up, and then we have our highest ranking participants or our highest ranking applicants.
So like,
Is
is
that
there
not
a
how this
rubric?
would work?
Is that what you're saying, a rubric
I'm
for
not
that?
saying it's the best thing to do, but I'm thinking
love the
it might be a good
question.
idea.
No, I love the question. For me, if you don't have a statement, I'm going to rate it 5, and Mike is going to rate it 1. And unless I really have some specific, did they say this, did they say that, did they say that, then the 1 to 5 to me is really even more subjective. So I kind of was going on this kind of whole humane idea about like, hey, who's a good person for this? But I understand the rating, but
But you can
I
rate,
think it could evolve into that. I guess we have to try it and see how it works,
But when
And
you-
I'm not part of that, I didn't write it, Patty wrote with a lot of other people, and
I think that's that board input.
but when I looked at the profile, those looked like screeners, things you would want to
good
consider.
job, thanks.
So when you look at the profile that you're looking for, that would be the screener or the filter that you'd want to run that selection through. So I think you could, if you wanted to, you could probably rank them off those screeners.
Thank you, because that was the intent of like, let's communicate what we're kind of thinking about. Thanks, John, makes that helpful.
I think, any other questions? I think we ought to consider taking action on this today. There's a timeline associated with your schedule, for the whole adoption process, so unless there's any objection, I will ask for action this afternoon. Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the community involvement in textbook adoptions proposal as presented by Ms. McCann?
Like that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
So I'm just curious that, Steve, you were saying if there, we'll see how it goes and see what the feedback is after this science adoption. And, we're taking an action today, but if there's tweaking or whatnot, does that take another action to, change a question or?
well, I hope it doesn't.
I guess that's what I'm wondering, that,
We won't be able
to
to
make
do our
little
work.
adjustments in something, does that require an action?
The board can always change procedure. Procedure is far less restrictive than policy.
Okay, I guess that's what I'm looking for,
Well,
that,
this is what I would say, so this, the reason it's in front of the board is because it is an entirely new way of bringing people onto committees.
Okay.
And we haven't done it. But what I hope that, if the administration has to bring every single thing forward to the board, we won't get much work done.
well, I was hoping that was gonna be the answer.
Yeah.
So a procedure will not bind you near as tightly as a policy. So you can change procedure pretty easy.
And here's what I would hope, Catherine, is that if changes are made to it, they're made by that task force and that committee of, however many people are sitting around 15 and say this worked well for us or it didn't work well for us. Because, there's some of our great teachers and committee members, so.
Yeah, I'm looking at where we're approving this process, and that this is part of that process, and we're approving the idea of having an application that's filled out. As far as them modifying it, tweaking it, whatever you want to do, I'm fine with them going ahead and making those changes as they go along, but we feel it's important as part of that process to have this application.
So I think that's our view of it.
I agree with that.
Any additional questions?
Could I then just kind of say, what I'll do is after we go through that process, kind of just keep you informed, well, this was kind of a little bit off the mark, we'll try to fix that up and tell you what we're gonna fix it up with, and if you've got issues, right, but otherwise you trust that I'll try to be fair.
Okay, let's, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. So passed by unanimous vote. Thank you.
I'll make that motion.
I was just.
You were thinking.
I was.
the thing.
Thinking
That's
too
what
much.
got you.
Yeah, overthinking. Thank you, everyone. Meeting
Thanks.
adjourned.
Thank you.
I saw him.